Okay, hello, how are you? I hope you're all doing well. The idea is to work with you a little bit with the ending of the story Secrets that you've been reading by Bernard McLaverty, and to discuss the ending, and in a later video to also discuss the themes of the story. So if you remember from what you last read, the boy had read the letters that Aunt Mary kept as a secret. I'm sure that you all were able to find there what the secret was. Some of you have predicted that it was, let's say, an affair that she was having with another man, or war secrets, or some kind of relationship that she wanted to keep to herself and she didn't want the rest of them to know about. And well, many of you were right. If you also remember, and you can see here at the top of the screen, here we have the moment in which Aunt Mary returns and she sees the boy reading those letters and says, "What are you doing, boy?" She snapped. Remember that snapped means that you're quite angry, right? It's a very sharp reaction. And he says nothing. He stood with the keys in his hand. She walked to the bureau and opened it. The letters sprung out in an untidy heap. Remember, he tried to put those letters, like he kind of stacked them in there and closed the door as quickly as he could because he heard that his aunt was coming up the stairs. And it says, "You have been reading my letters," she said quietly. Her mouth was tight with the words and her eyes blazed, meaning that she was extremely angry, right? The boy could say nothing. She struck him across the side of the face. So she actually physically, violently hits him across the face, which also adds to that very sharp reaction. "Get out," she said. "Get out of my room." The boy, the side of his face stinging and red, put the keys on the table on his way out. When he reached the door, she called to him. He stopped, his hand on the handle. "You are dirt," she hissed. You know what? The animal that hisses is a snake, right? So when you hiss, it means that you're trying to be very venomous with your words. The intention behind the use of that reporting verb instead of saying "she said," right, is to stress and to emphasize that what she's going to say, or what she has just said, is intended to hurt him, right? You are dirt and always will be dirt. I shall remember this till the day I die. And this is very important because this is the end of the flashback, right? So, and the flashback ends with making reference to her death, which if you remember the beginning of the story, we are attending, or we are, let's say, witnessing Aunt Mary's death. So she has told him that she will remember this till the day she dies. And that is the end of the flashback. And you can also notice here the use of these like three little stars, which separates the story. So if we return back to the very, very top of the story, let me see if I can get there, you will see that the beginning of the flashback starts with these here we have again those three little stars, right? And so it kind of separates the different sections of the story, right? I'm going to return back to the ending. And so this is what happens at the end, right? So this is the end, what happens at the end of the flashback. This is the end of the flashback. We see Aunt Mary telling him that she will remember this till the day she dies. And in fact, she does, or he believes she does. And so the day she died has arrived. And so here we return to, let's say, the present of the story. So we can think of this story as being, in a way, circular. So we have the beginning of the story with Aunt Mary dying, the boy sitting there at the desk, at the table, and remembering, right, this moment, and the author decides to use a flashback, which isn't exactly just the boy's memories. It's actually taking us into that past, right? So we witness the past. So that is quite a strong difference, right, between remembering and the use of flashback. The use of flashback, you can think of, for example, examples that we've worked with before, but you can also think of, for example, the use of flashback in movies, right? So it's a resource which is quite visual. There's going to be a lot of imagery, and the imagery and the visualness of this adds to, let's say, the effect and emphasizes that moment. So this is a very relevant and important moment of the past, which has some kind of connection. Some of you wrote this in your work. It's a link or a bridge between the present and the past. And that past will always have some kind of incidence in the present, right? And the incidence that we can think of here is that this moment has marked and has changed the relationship between this boy and his aunt, right? And he still feels bad about what happened there, right? So now returning to the present of the story, I'm going to just quickly read it and then we can try to analyze it a little bit. It says, even though it was a warm evening, there was a fire in the large fireplace. His mother had asked him to light it so that she could clear out Aunt Mary's stuff. So Aunt Mary has already died. They are clearing out his stuff, which means that which means that they are getting rid of or sorting out among her belongings. It says the room could then be his study, she said. She came in and seeing him at the table said, I hope I'm not disturbing you. No. She took the keys from her pocket, opened the bureau and began burning papers and cards. She glanced quickly at each one before she flicked it onto the fire. Who was Brother Benignus? He asked. His mother stopped sorting and said, I don't know. Your aunt kept herself very much to herself. She got books from him through the post occasionally. That much I do know. So this is interesting. Remember that when he was reading the letters, she was receiving these letters from John. Now, if you remember the last letter that she received, in her last letter, John says to Mary, I have been thinking a lot, I'm reading here, I have been thinking a lot as I lie here about the war and about myself and about you. I do not know how to say this, but I feel deeply that I must do something, must sacrifice something to make up for the horror of the past year, referring to the death and to everything that he's seen at war. In some strange way, Christ has spoken to me through the carnage. So what we can interpret and what we can understand here is that what John is going to sacrifice is his relationship with Mary. And John, when he returns from war, will become Brother Benignus. He will become a priest of the church. So that connection is not made explicit, but we can interpret that connection. Okay? So what we can see is that Mary continued some kind of relationship with Brother Benignus, but no longer as her lover or as her boyfriend or as her partner, but as a friend. She went on burning the cards. They built into strata, glowing red and black. Now and again, she broke up the pile with a poker. The poker is what you use to poke the wood, or in this case, the cards in a fireplace, sending showers of sparks up the chimney. He saw her come to the letters. She took off the elastic band and put it to one side with the useful things and began dealing the envelopes into the fire. She opened one and read quickly through it, then threw it on top of the burning pile. Mama, he said. Yes. Did Aunt Mary say anything about me? What do you mean? Before she died, did she say anything? Not that I know of. The poor thing was too far gone to speak. God rest her. She went on burning, lifting the corners of the letters with the poker to let the flames underneath them. So this is really important, people. She is burning the cards and the letters and the postcards and everything that was in that bureau, right? And when she comes to the letters, she takes off, when I say she, I mean the mother, she takes off the elastic band, which is the useful thing. So she puts that into the useful thing. So what we can see here about the mother is how, let's say, practical she is, right? This is to say that if we think about it, and we think about it in terms of the story, what is useful is it the elastic band that's holding that pile of letters, or is it the content of those letters? Thinking of the content of those letters as a testament or as a testimony of a soldier at war. So even not only in Aunt Mary's personal life, let's say, but also in terms of its historic value, right? Or historical value. So here, if we have a look at the ending, it says we see how the boy is still very much concerned about whether Aunt Mary has forgiven him or not. And we come to an understanding that we do not know, right? And so it says, when he felt a hardness in his throat, he put his head down on his books. Tears came into his eyes for the first time since she had died, and he cried silently. Okay, so I'm just going to read the ending again. I'm sorry, I had to stop there for a second. It says, when he felt a hardness in his throat, he put his head down on his books. Tears came into his eyes for the first time since she had died, and he cried silently into the crook of his arm. This is the crook of your arm, right? So he kind of does something like this, and for the first time he's able to cry. And it says, for the woman who had been his maiden aunt, his teller of tales, that she might forgive him. So in a way, at the ending here, he is asking for her forgiveness. He's expecting her forgiveness. He's thinking that perhaps there is a possibility that his maiden aunt, right, his aunt that never got married, his teller of tales, referring back to his childhood days, that she might forgive him. And we're left here with a very sorrowful ending. And in a way, we don't know whether she has forgiven him or not. She has forgiven him or not. And that ending there makes us think about how deeply sorry he was for what he has done, and how sometimes we don't know. There's nothing told to us about what happens between that moment of the flashback and when he is already a teenage boy. So what is left here hanging, or the sensation that we get at the end of this story, is that the time is now. The time to ask for forgiveness is now. We can't leave for tomorrow, right? What we can do today, kind of thing, right? So that idea that if there is something that is bothering us, or if there's something a relationship that we need to mend, the time to do that is now, because it might be too late. So this is a little bit the ending of the story. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can ask, and later, and then in the next video, we'll be working a little bit with themes.